This is going to go nowhere. No one's going to read this. This isn't important. And I hit publish. I went to bed. I woke up the next morning and the piece had gone viral. It had thousands of likes. I tripled, quadrupled, 5x'd my following. I can't remember at the time. It took me 45 weeks to get to, I think, 300 newsletter subscribers, and I probably signed up half of them. And overnight, I went from 300 to 1,500.
Welcome to Entrepreneur's Handbook Podcast, where we share inspiring startup stories with practical takeaways for you, the listener. Today's guest is Dickie Bush, who you might know from Twitter, where he's amassed over 200,000 followers in just over 2 years. Dickie was a portfolio manager at BlackRock and started writing on the side because he knew he wasn't happy with where his job was eventually going to lead him. He saw no traction for months, then eventually took off, and now he helps other people to do the same. Working alongside Nicholas Cole, he runs Ship30for30, which is an online program that's seen over 4,000 students come through their doors. They've also released a SaaS product called TypeShare, which makes it easier for online bloggers to publish in multiple places in record time. Dickie actually only left his job 6 weeks ago to become a full-time entrepreneur. And you can just tell how excited he is about where he is on his journey. And it's pretty amazing he got as far as he did while still having a full-time job. Welcome to Entrepreneur's Handbook, Dickie. It's a pleasure to have you here.
What's going on, Amara? I really appreciate you having me. It's going to be a fun conversation. Been looking forward to this one for a few days.
Yeah, I've been following you on Twitter for some time now, and I really enjoyed seeing the growth of Ship30for30 and how your presence has grown and the confidence in what you're doing and bringing more people on board. But for the people who are listening today who aren't aware of what you're up to, can you give them an insight into where everything started from, what made you become an entrepreneur in the first place?
Ooh, okay. So we can go a couple ways with that. I guess what I do currently is I'm a co-founder of Ship30for30, which is a writing course that helps people start writing online. The origin of that, you can go all the way back to January of 2020, when I was working full-time on Wall Street and realized that I didn't think that was going to be the long term for me. I kind of looked around at the people I was working with who were 5, 6, 7 years older than me and realized that wasn't the path I wanted to take. These were 35, 40-year-olds getting on the train at 5 a.m. from, different parts of New York to get to their desks by 6:30 to stay till 7 p.m. to leave. And I knew it wasn't something I was going to want to do long term. And so I thought to myself, how do I go about exploring some new opportunities without necessarily quitting? Because I did really enjoy the job I was doing at the time, but I didn't feel strongly about putting in more work to do anything long-term there. So I started writing on the internet and exposing myself to new opportunities. All I did was start a newsletter, which was a curation of interesting things I had learned, read, listened to, thought of during the week. And what I was really sharing were things I was learning on my kind of journey of self-improvement. I graduated college and realized that you can even take a step further behind this. I played football in college and then stopped playing football at the end, obviously. So I had to kind of rewire my life's operating system a little bit. And so I went on this path of kind of learning and self-improvement and all that. And so my newsletter at the time was a bit of curation from what I was learning. Fast forward 9 months, I was writing every single week on my own blog, publishing things that went into the void that no one ended up reading. And I was following that conventional playbook because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I read everywhere that you're supposed to write a weekly blog post and you do that for a long time and then hopefully it works. And I was ready to kind of give up writing entirely and think, okay, I got to go back and do this Wall Street thing full time. I really got to double down on it because I tried to explore some new opportunities and it just wasn't clicking for me. And after that, I said, okay, I'm going to give it one last shot. And instead of writing something every week, I'm going to write something every single day on Twitter. And I still remember 28 days into that, I posted my 28th post and it got 0 likes. And so I remember going home after I think I published it at a coffee shop and said, okay, that's it. Like, this is enough. I gave it my all. I really liked this writing thing and it's just not for me. But I said, okay, I'm going to finish the 30 days. So I went on the next day, hit publish on something that to this day, I still remember sitting there thinking, this is going to go nowhere. No one's going to read this. This isn't important. And I hit publish. I went to bed. I woke up the next morning and the piece had gone viral. It had thousands of likes. I tripled, quadrupled, 5x'd my following. I can't remember at the time. It took me 45 weeks to get to, I think, 300 newsletter subscribers, and I probably signed up half of them. And overnight, I went from 300 to 1,500. So long story short, I realized that I was right on the edge for a long time, but really needed to accelerate that feedback loop. And it all kind of clicked on day 29. So where does that lead into Ship30? So it led into Ship30 because I realized that a lot of the conventional writing advice out there was ineffective. It led people to have very slow feedback loops, really writing on their own blog, not having any kind of built-in distribution, all that. And so I realized the power of writing every day for 30 days because from that thread, so many opportunities came to me. I ended up meeting my co-founder, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I had people in my DM saying that was incredible, like people I genuinely looked up to and had been reading forever, and realized that writing is the way to unlock new opportunities if you do it correctly. And so Ship30 is now taking that experience I had of writing every day for 30 days and trying to spread it to as many people as possible. Our mission is to get 1 million people through the program to start writing online and start to kind of experience the transformation we've had. And so that's what I'm up to now.
Yeah, and in those early days, like going back to Jan 2020, that's when I started writing as well. So similar story there. What made you go for the route you did with the newsletter, and how did you even get those first few people? Was it just people you knew, or where did that initial momentum come from?
I went the newsletter route just because I remember reading a couple posts that said, start with a newsletter and have a blog, so you have some kind of distribution. And I realized that there was no downside. Worst case, I was going to better understand these ideas. These were going to force me to clarify actually what I was learning and listening to, reading, all that. The initial readers were basically everyone that I knew that I signed up on my own. I just basically put in their email address, my mom, my roommates, all of them, and said, hey, you're going to read this because I wrote it and I signed you up. Thanks. And so that was day by day, one or two extra people, other people that I went to school with or whatever. But I mean, until I really got active on Twitter, the entirety of the people reading were all people I knew already. So this whole exposing myself to new opportunities thing wasn't coming to fruition when I was just writing on my own blog.
It's interesting because I see a lot of people who are new to the space and trying to build brands. They really focus on the people they already know to begin with. And they get annoyed if their friends or their parents don't read their emails or don't like their posts. As like I said, that's playing in the wrong sandbox because it doesn't matter in a way. What you need is a feedback from strangers because it's more honest. If somebody's only reading your article, only reading your newsletter because they know you, then that doesn't give you any real feedback about the quality of it.
Right. No one's going to call your kid ugly.
It's like I said there, where when you start putting yourself out there on Twitter to the open public, that actually can really get better feedback because if other people are liking it, that probably means you're getting something better there. You're getting on the right path. And as you said, one of the difficult things is what many people have is if you don't have a large sample size, then any of the data you get from that is basically useless. If you post once a month and it's like this one got 10 likes and that one got 5 likes, that's just a rounding error, right? Whereas when you're posting consistently, that's you can start to see those trends. You can start to see, oh, okay, when I write about this, people like what I think or they like this way that I'm thinking. And what made you start on Twitter? Because there's also LinkedIn, there's Medium. Do you remember what triggered you to go down the Twitter route?
So on that point of having a faster feedback loop, Twitter is the ultimate place to get that feedback. You have aggregated attention. Everyone is on there to consume information. And that's why I was on there. I was always lurking and never creating. So I would scroll, like, engage, whatever, but I was never posting. And so I recognized all the other people who were building quickly on Twitter and saw it was all the feedback loops. So on that point you made of you can't post monthly. one of the core principles of Ship30 we got from Jack Butcher, which is make noise and listen for signal. What that means is a lot of people start writing and they have an assumption of what they want to write about and what the market wants to read from them. But for 99% of people, that's an incorrect assumption on both sides. They come into Ship30 and say, I want to write about productivity. And if they wrote on a weekly or monthly basis, they'd probably have that assumption for a long time. But since we force them to write every single day, so many of them come in and say, for 6 days, I wrote everything I ever wanted to say about productivity, and now I never want to talk about it again. And that allows them, you have a faster feedback loop both internally and externally. So internally, you up your publishing cadence and you realize, hey, I actually really like this thing and not that thing. And then externally, you're putting out so many more data points that you understand what the market is actually looking for, right? So it's this mix of making noise, both for yourself and for others, and then listening to what is the market saying I want to read? What do I actually wake up excited to write? And then you look at that intersecting Venn diagram and you go down that path and you keep iterating. And that's how you do it. And we use Twitter because it's got the fastest feedback loop of any platform out there.
I have the same thing that I have people who come to me and say, oh, I want to write about this. And like, can you help me write about this? And I say to them, like, come up with 10 headlines. If you can't come up with 10 headlines, then you don't want to write about that. You've just got one idea that you want to talk about. And you should have at least like 10 ideas. And in your case, you've got 30 ideas. If you can't get to that amount, then it's not a sustainable path, right? If you can't do more than the first thing that comes to your mind, then you've got to pick another topic, or if you want to write at all. And think about that as well. It's like, what then went from this idea of Ship30 for 30 and it working for you to it then being something which you thought could help other people? And how did you make that into a business and into a course?
So I had 600-ish followers at the time. I think this was October 2020. And I sent out a tweet. And so what I realized on my personal 30-day writing challenge was, hey, this is really fun, but damn, is it hard to stick to on your own. So I tweeted out to my nascent following at the time, hey, would anyone be interested in doing a 30-day writing challenge with me? And the response was overwhelming. Everyone said, this is exactly what I need. Instead of writing weekly, I want to write daily. Instead of writing anything long form, I want to validate my ideas with short form writing. And I just moved quickly on it and had everyone up in. So the response was so overwhelming that I couldn't do it for free. It would have been too many people. So the initial cohort was $50, and I was so scared to charge money for it that I said, you got your money back if you completed all 30 days. So here I am, like completing things in PayPal, getting people into a Slack. But I did it very quickly with Typeform and Slack and had 50 people who'd give me $50 in a Slack channel. And I spent that initial cohort figuring out exactly what it was that got people to join. So I knew who I was going to target with future kind of advertising and copy and all that. Figure out why the successful ones, why it was working, why they were sticking to it, and really treated that as a beta cohort for what would a 30-day writing challenge / accountability / community, all of that look like. And the last year, so we're recording this in May 2022, it was, how do we refine that process so every single person who joins has a transformational experience? And I say we because I ended up partnering with Nicholas Cole in January of 2021. He enrolled. We had met earlier, all because of that writing I did where I was doing some work for someone on the writing side who discovered me from that Twitter thread from my 30-day challenge. And he introduced me to Cole. And then I think he's been on the podcast already. And we hit it off. And he said, dude, because his story is exactly the same as mine of he wrote every single day on Quora. And after writing every day on Quora, his life completely changed, just like mine had from writing every day on Twitter. And so he saw it immediately and said, whoa, this is cool. And I knew that he was way better at writing and still is than I am. And if I wanted to take this from a writing challenge and a habit building course to something that actually teaches you how to write online, that we needed a partner. So it was perfect from the beginning there. And that was the transition from, okay, this is something that we could charge $50 for. Now, this is a course that is really going to teach you how to distill your ideas and put them on the internet.
Was that partnership difficult there? Because obviously you met through mutual friends. Like, how did you decide that? Because a lot of people struggle to find the co-founders, or they have negative experiences. How did you know that Cole was the right person?
I didn't overthink it. We hit it off. We had extremely similar backgrounds. We both were professional gamers in high school and middle school. We both were relatively high-level athletes. He was a damn good bodybuilder, and I played football in college. We had both had our lives changed by writing every day, and we clicked pretty quickly. And I just went into it. I said, let's be 50-50 on this, and let's just do it, right? We didn't overthink it. I think a lot of people start solving problems they don't have. They're like, oh, I don't want to give up X, Y, and Z, whatever. But they're giving up 50% of nothing in the beginning. And so we didn't overthink it. We said, let's just go all in on this thing. And I say all in like I wasn't working a full-time job the first up until 6 weeks ago building this thing, but all in together, let's build it. And it worked out.
Yeah. And how did you manage building that on the side as well? Because obviously I imagine your previous company would have been happy if you were doing this in working hours. So how did you manage that? Like both the commitment to your employer, but also this exciting thing that you're building on the side and that was really taking off.
I'll preface this because anti-hustle culture will cancel me for it, that I was a 25-year-old single dude with no real external responsibilities outside of my home. But I woke up every day at 4:30 a.m. for 12 months and worked from 4:30 to 9 when I would log in for my regular job, basically every single day and every single weekend for 15 months. And I say that because that was the only way it was going to get done. I couldn't do it during the day, and I didn't like to work into the late night. I was always kind of a morning person, so I just did what needed to get done. And I think it's an important message for people to hear sometimes of, if you really do want to build something on the side, you have to make time on the side, which is usually earlier than you'd like to be up, but it is what it is, and it worked out.
Do you think the pandemic helped you there? Because I know for me, for example, when I started building everything, I didn't really have much choice, where I couldn't really go out, I couldn't see my friends, I could sit at home and watch Netflix, or I could do writing, or I could try doing something online. And I wondered myself whether or not I'd be where I am today if I wasn't forced in some ways to have that kind of a lifestyle of pretty much working all the time, but I wasn't giving anything up. So you said you quit your job recently. For me, the decision to quit was based on, once the world opened up again, then I could either have my job, my side hustles, or a social life, like 2 out of those 3. And I had to decide which one did I want to cut. And for me, I cut work, so I could take the side hustles full time and maintain a social life. What was behind the decision for you in terms of quitting the day job? Because obviously you could be earning quite a lot by doing both.
Yeah, I stayed for the year because of that, side hustle, main job, social life. I just cut the social life. I said, hey, however much fun I could possibly have as a 25-year-old in like a partially locked down economy is not going to be as much fun as I can have if I really go and build something cool. So I made the active decision to, even when things started to open up a little bit, to continue working. Now, the big reason, there are 2 main reasons I ended up leaving the full-time job. One, it became the bottleneck on my personal growth of the business. I said once that was the case, where I could, the number of dollars I was earning per hour working on this were trivial compared to what I could do on something that I had full ownership of. That was the easy choice. Now, another reason was, even if I wanted to do both, they were bringing us back into the office, and the idea that I was ever going to step foot in a corporate office again after working remotely and doing the same job for a year and a half without having people staring at me and pretending to work half the day because other people were around. I mean, that just wasn't going to happen. And so that was things all kind of came to a head around March of 22. And made the choice, and here we are.
Would you think of yourself as naturally introverted or extroverted? Because I'm just thinking that I know that you've got such a big role in the community. So you're constantly talking to people through the Ship30for30. So I wouldn't imagine you to be introverted and want to be working from home as much. But at the same time, you've got this duality in a way. So where do you kind of see yourself on that spectrum?
I think I'm an outgoing introvert in the sense that it tires me out. Like after this podcast, I'm going to be kind of tired, but I can bring juice to any situation knowing that I recharge on my own. So I think the definition introvert, extrovert of where do you get your energy? I definitely want to be alone to energize and feel like I'm spending energy when I'm with other people, but I'm not shy. I can come out and be friends with anyone and bring juice to all the conversations. And so that's kind of like our live calls. I am up basically in front of 500 people talking for an hour and a half and bring tons of juice. And then afterwards, I'm like, oof, shut the computer, be off for the day, right? So that's kind of where I sit on that spectrum.
For this first live calls, how did you kind of gain the confidence to be able to do that? Or was it kind of slowly building up the size of the audience? Because I imagine if you weren't used to that, to go from 0 to 500 people on a live call must have been pretty intimidating.
Definitely. It was luckily that the cohort grew slowly. Like we went from 100 to 200. But the thing about Zoom is you can just put yourself up there and turn the number off on the number of people on the call. And it's no different than talking to 5 or 500. You know, if I was actually in a room with 500 people, I'd probably still get butterflies. But to this day, I think the biggest one we had was like 750 people. And I remember when that one hit, I was like, Google, 750 people in a room, like saw the picture, freaked out, turned Zoom, made sure the participants thing was hidden and was like, I'm just going to put myself and Cole on the screen and we're going to talk. And that's kind of still what I do.
What other skills do you think you built up during the process of Ship30for30? What's like the key skills that maybe you didn't think you were going to get, but you've surprised yourself in a good way?
So I was a computer science and math major in college, and I actually hated writing, mostly because my freshman year writing class, I thought, you know, I didn't recognize at the time. I was like, why are we hitting a minimum number of words on this thing? Like, isn't that mean we're not writing clearly? I didn't see it at the time how stupid it was, but I recognized something was wrong. So anyway, I studied math and computer science. Writing for me was filling a core skill that I wanted to develop and knew that if you can, basically writing is a multiplier on anything you want to do. If you're a designer, but you can write, you're going to be a way better designer, more effective, because it's the foundation for all creative and knowledge work. Whether you're making videos, podcasting, sales, marketing, all that, it all starts with writing. So I saw it as the foundational skill I wanted to develop. Now, what I ended up building was an entire stack of skills to build a digital business. So email marketing, copywriting, no-code automation, writing landing pages, all that kind of stuff, sales. All those skills are a byproduct because when you're building a business on your own, your skill set is the bottleneck, right? So if I didn't know how to write a landing page, I had to go learn. And I think a lot of people get caught up of like, oh, I need to build these skills and then I'll start a business. Whereas the only way to build those skills is to have them be the bottleneck on the growth of your business. So instead of, I call this just in time versus just in case learning, which is, it feels so good sometimes to be reading books and taking courses just in case that information is relevant. But there's nothing better than having a project you're working on, identifying the bottleneck to its growth, going and tactically learning just that skill, returning it, applying it, and then continuing, right? So I call it productive procrastination, when you're just reading and listening and you're like, oh, I'm getting so much better, but you're not really moving the needle.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people fall to that trap, right? Of they'll be reading something about, I was like, oh, that's a great idea, I'll do that one day. But if you keep accumulating these ideas that you're going to do one day, you don't actually do any of them. And even for the people listening right now, it's like, pick an idea and just start getting moving on it. Whatever it is, if it's going to be, you want to start writing, write something. Just get that first thing out there.
Yeah, I have a good parable for that really changed the way, and I still think about it almost every day. There were two men who wanted to learn to fish. And the first guy says, I want to learn to fish. So I'm going to go buy a custom fiber rod. I'm going to go sign up for a bunch of fishing courses. I'm going to buy a new boat. I'm going to, read all these books, go buy all the fanciest gear, whatever. And that takes him about 2 or 3 months to go through. The other fisherman says, I'm going to grab this stick right here with string on it, and I'm going to head down to the lake today and start fishing. And so he spends the 3 months that the other one is quote unquote learning, actually fishing and learning what it means to fish. And so he went on the first day, didn't catch anything. And so we had a feedback loop. Well, I should probably go to a different spot. And then the second day, maybe he got a nibble. Third day, whatever. And by the time the other fisherman gets to the lake, it's been completely sucked dry by the first fisherman. He's gone on to not only learn how to fish, but start an entire fishing business. He's opened a restaurant. Now he's teaching other fishermen how to fish, and he's scaled his whole operation. And so the moral of that story is, when you find yourself gathering gear, books, courses, all that stuff, just grab a shitty rod and start fishing. And I think about that every day. Whenever I'm reading, learning, I'm like, how can I just go grab a fishing rod and start fishing today?
Yeah, I think for myself, if I'm going to take a course, I tend to take it once I've already started doing the thing. Because then wherever I'm learning, I can directly apply it straight away. And I've got the same, it's almost an arrogance in a way of like, I don't want to have to take a course before I start doing. I want to kind of get going, see what I can prove it to myself that I can get it done. And then when I want to improve or go to the next level, that's when I take a course to help me along. And it's just the mindset, right? Of I see a challenge, like I can take that on. I'm going to start going on that. And have you had any challenges during this process which were almost a bit too big, and then you had to dial back, or you learned hard lessons along that way?
So the one I had, which was during the March cohort of 2021, that was our biggest one. And at the time, I actually caught COVID, which was a funny story in itself, but was in a hotel trying to host a 300-person Zoom on shitty Wi-Fi in the hotel. And I had so many things going on that I didn't renew our Zoom license to have more than 100 people. And so here we are on the kickoff call. We had just doubled the price of the cohort. It was $200 instead of $99. I'm like freaking out that I charged that much money. And here we are with 2/3 on the kickoff call, unable to get in the room, saying this call is at capacity. And I'm sitting there on this Wi-Fi that, more or less was a dial-up connection, trying to run this call. And I remember freaking out at the time and like having to stop. And I stopped the call and, took some deep breaths and was like, okay, I got to stop this thing. And I remember getting a handful of refund requests after that call, thinking people saying this is so poorly run, all this stuff. And I remember hearing all that and almost wanting to give up on it. I was like, look, I'm clearly in over my head trying to have this many people on a call. And I had to stop and realize, okay, there's going to be a vocal minority of people. You should refund them, no questions asked, just like you said. But then there were so many people who the next day reached out and said, hey, I know you're kind of balancing a lot here. That was fine. I think don't worry about it. We're all here. We're still involved, like all this stuff. And I learned that a lot of the struggles and really any kind of battle you're facing, 95% of it is the story you're telling yourself in your head of its significance. And so the story I was telling myself was every person on that call thinks I'm a joke. They want their money back. They hate this course, whatever, because I let the 3 or 4 people who had probably bad days themselves, and then that was compounded with my call going awry, really infect my mental state. And so the big lesson I have there is always audit your own story, right? Instead of saying this is true, saying the story I'm telling myself is that story true? Go evaluate it. And that was a big lesson, and I've been applying it quite often since then.
And I think the other point there as well is just that a lot of people are actually much more forgiving than you might give them credit for, is that people don't necessarily want to see you fail. Like, they can understand that you're growing, that you're trying out different things. They're willing to have a bit of leeway there to kind of accept that and say, look, we bought this course for a reason, or it's whatever project you're doing, whatever product you're making, that they believe in you. And some people, of course, like if there's one mistake, they're going to straight away pull the money out. But others want to see it through, and they want to kind of be part of that journey. And looking at like how the business has expanded now over time, where, like you said, you went from like 50 people in that first cohort to there's 300 to even more than that now. And at some point, you can't be the person who's doing everything in that kind of process. And I know that you're looking at a SaaS product as well now. So you've got TypeShare that you've been building alongside Ship30for30. Can you tell us more about that and what was the motivation behind building a kind of tool in that way?
So a couple things on that. Yeah, Ship30 started as a 50-person cohort, and over the last 15 months, we've helped over 4,000. So we hit that 4,000 mark. Our mission is to get to 1 million. So we're about, I think, is that 0.4%? Yeah, 0.4% of the way there. So we got some work to do. But the reason, I guess there's two questions there. One is delegation, hiring, if you're able to realize that if you want to scale, what things you should hire for. And so we've hired 2 rockstar contractors who work all the time with us on building infrastructure, things that we knew we had to remove ourselves from if we wanted to continue crafting new offers, creating new products, all that stuff that only we could do. And so figuring out what I could hire for to do the commodity work that I was doing, which was undifferentiated. So that was the first step. It was, managing our emails, setting up sequences, all those things that I didn't have a unique advantage doing. On the TypeShare side, one thing we've done is recognize that the problem with a lot of course businesses is it is one and done. And so you buy the course and then that's it. So the first thing we did was we created a follow-on community of people who really loved Ship30 and wanted to continue doing it. So in its initial stages, all it was you joined and you got to keep doing Ship30 afterwards. And that converted pretty well because a lot of people loved it. And we've continued to improve that offer that now it's more of a choose your own writing adventure where you come and write for 30 days and then there's a lot of different paths that you can take. You could become a ghostwriter, a content writer. You could launch digital products. You could become a copywriter. You could go 100 different directions. And so we've created a ton of educational resources to say, hey, if you enjoyed writing for 30 days and want to keep doing this, right, we have this solution for you. It's somewhere in here. And what that does is it also builds community equity where we have more people around us all the time, engaging with us, learning with us, growing with us, all that good stuff that helps us attract more people into Ship30 because they see more people associated with it. And so that was one way to kind of extend customer LTV while also providing more value. The SaaS side, which TypeShare is our writing platform, was we had people who were building a writing habit and we said, go do your writing on X, Y, and Z, use X, Y, and Z tool. So instead, we built something in-house that said, not only are we going to teach you how to write, we're going to show you where to write, provide you with a lot of the initial frictions that come with writing online are like, what platform should I use? When should I post? How do I format this? All that stuff. How could we simplify that process? And so that is what TypeShare does is now they join the course. We say, hey, you could write anywhere, but a lot of the course is going to be a lot easier and your long-term writing journey will be easier if you use this as well. So it kind of melds in nicely. And it's a way of, I was inspired by Amazon, and by no way am I comparing myself to Amazon with this, but they were looking at their expense items on their income statement and saying, how can we turn those into our own products? And so instead of sending people to another writing platform, we said, let's build our own.
What's the revenue model on that side?
TypeShare is a monthly SaaS subscription. So it's $20 a month. And I think we just hit 15K MRR. So looking to continue to grow that one as more and more people. What's cool is that when you have that as an acquisition, there's people who have not taken Ship30 now who are finding out about Ship30 via TypeShare. So we have this new problem of how do we educate people on, hey, if you enjoy TypeShare, you might want to join Ship30 versus Ship30 being all the lead magnet for TypeShare, we're like at this very interesting point where I'm excited about the potential growth as we hone that flywheel. But that's basically what I'm waking up every day thinking about and trying to crack.
Yeah, and like you've now got kind of two separate products which are both thriving in different ways. Which is the one that you kind of see growing, or you're trying to grow both at the same time? Is there more products in the works? What's the kind of future plans now for what you're building?
So I guess there's a couple things, right? At its core, Ship30 is a course that teaches you how to write on the internet. How much of that we could then bake into TypeShare as a SaaS platform is something we're thinking about. What if Ship30 was something that you could opt into when you join TypeShare, right? We could connect it that way. And this is actually helpful because I'm still talking out this customer journey in my head. Right now, the majority of people who come into the Ship30 ecosystem come in through our ultimate guide to start writing online. It's a 13,000 word guide that we give away for free. Just all you have to do is give us your email. And that has a 7-lesson email course as well that kind of walks through how to get started. There is a bunch of different integrations and kind of figuring out, hey, should we send people to TypeShare? Should TypeShare be the primary acquisition for Ship30? All those things we're kind of thinking about. And then on top of that, we eventually want to sell our expertise and process for building an effective course and community. We think we've built something very special with Ship30. The number of people who rave about it is, I think, higher than other courses. We get a lot of just awesome words of gratitude and encouragement, right? Because of what people experienced during their Ship30 transformation. And so there are a lot of writers who have an audience who want to build a course in some way to show their expertise, and we're going to help others start doing that. And that'll be likely higher ticket because it'll take some more hands-on work, all that kind of stuff. So what is exciting is I could never think about all the potential paths of the business when I was working full-time. And so just in the last 6 weeks, I've had more mental bandwidth to say, what does this actually look like over a 3 to 5 to 10 year horizon? And unlocking the ability to think long-term has been fun. And so it's the kind of work that doesn't feel productive because you're kind of just staring out the window like, could we do this? Could we do that? How would this work? And I'm just trying to learn and listen and study other funnels and things like that. But that's a long-winded way of saying we have the burden of opportunity right now, which is a really good problem to have. Figuring out where to allocate our efforts is going to be the next challenge.
It's something I think about too in terms of the longer term, because I think it's the nature of the platforms we're on where you always kind of think about the next month or the next year. And it's quite difficult to think beyond that because, well, for example, you've got Elon Musk buying Twitter now. Has that affected any of your plans? Have you got any risks associated with, because the majority of your audience, I think, is coming through Twitter? Have you got any concerns there or things you're thinking about?
Yeah, that had been on our radar really because the primary acquisition was Twitter. And so we're doing more on the SEO side, more on the LinkedIn side, and building our email newsletter as well. But a lot of people are thinking, if you have an audience on Twitter and Elon Musk does a good job with it, he's going to accelerate what you've done. So yes, there is huge platform risk. And we came into this year saying one of our strategic goals was to lessen the platform risk. So we're building audiences on LinkedIn, being more active there, writing some on Medium, doing a lot more SEO and blog post articles, and then really investing in our email newsletter as well to kind of broaden the number of ways people find out about Ship30.
I guess on that side, which are the channels that are most exciting you right now? Which are the ones which you think have really high potential to bring in a lot of people to Ship30?
Right now it's LinkedIn, and we just started writing on LinkedIn. And right now we're actually in our first cohort where people found out about Ship30 via LinkedIn. And we're seeing an interesting trend of higher engagement and commitment to the course from people we found from LinkedIn. And I think they see it as a career advancement versus just I'm building an audience, which a lot of people on Twitter are from that camp, versus if you come from LinkedIn, it's like I'm writing with a strategic reason here. And so I'm going to give far more into this. I'm investing heavier. And so that is what really excites us, because the engagement and feedback from people via LinkedIn has been very, very, very positive. So we're excited to kind of continue to build out that front.
I think it's one of those things that people often don't think about enough is the people that hang out on the different platforms and how they align to your target customer. Because, for example, with what I do at the moment, like a lot of founders tend to hang out on Twitter because like that's the easiest platform, like I said, the fast feedback loop. Whereas a lot of professionals and people who are working corporate jobs often hang out on LinkedIn. And obviously there's a crossover, both people are on different platforms. But that's what I tend to see is that some of the founders, the biggest platform is actually Twitter, because the kind of people are interested in it's more techie, it's that kind of side of things. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's a bit more varied. And a lot of people are looking at kind of career advice rather than just necessarily like how to build a business advice. And it's an interesting interplay for me as well about where to focus the time and the efforts in that regard. And for people who are listening right now who want to grow their presence on either platform, and obviously one thing that you promote is posting regularly, but what other things can they do if they want to grow their presence or advance their careers through writing?
So posting regularly is the foundation, right? Writing every single day, putting something out there, creating some data point that you can analyze. On top of that, I think I actually just wrote the exact playbook I would use if I was starting over from scratch. So what I would do is I would start a LinkedIn and a Twitter account and a TypeShare account. And I would write something every single day on both platforms. Then for the 30 minutes after I hit publish, I would go engage with anyone and answer every single comment and every single question and every single person who engaged with that. Then I would block another 30 minutes to go and try to build a relationship with someone in a similar niche around what I was doing. Then I would also write a weekly newsletter that would curate my best writing from the week and start to build an email list at the same time. So what you're doing here is you're building an email list, you're building Twitter and LinkedIn and the reason I said TypeShare is because it lets you publish to both with one click. Right? So instead of saying, hey, I got to copy paste, it just saves you time. What that's going to do is you're going to build basically an audience of different kinds of people, but using the same exact content. And so written content, you can use exactly the same on Twitter and LinkedIn. And that's been my LinkedIn strategy for a while is I tweeted every day for 15 months. And now I have all this, I know exactly what works. And so it's almost a copy paste, right? And then I just go engage. So you're building distribution with a newsletter, you're building an audience and people giving you feedback with your daily posts, and then you're building a network of people who are going to support you, help you grow, all that. If you do that for 52 weeks, it is impossible to fail as a writer. And so I want anyone listening to take that to heart is the most important part of that is the 52 weeks part, because no one has 10 shitty versions of anything. They either have 30 shitty versions and then figure it out, or they have 10 and they quit, right? Sorry, no one has 50 shitty versions of anything. They have 30 and then they figure it out, or they have 10 and they quit. And so all you have to do is basically not give up, and you're going to have success as a writer, especially if you're publishing consistently.
Do you ever find some people who take the course, the Ship30for30, where they find, like, let's say life gets in the way in some regard? Have you seen people then like take a bit of a break and then pick it up again and be able to thrive in that way? Because obviously some people might be listening and be worried that, like, oh, what about if something happens and I can't finish the 30 days? Then will I never be able to do it? But have you seen anybody come back and be able to complete the course and then go on to do well?
So I guess there's two things there. One, any kind of big life event, it's definitely takes precedence over Ship30. But so we have a lot of things in place with alumni captains and shipper success managers who reach out to people. We track throughout the course who's continuing to engage, how they're doing, and we intervene during points where they could potentially fall off. If we've learned anything, it's the rule of don't miss twice. And so if you start writing every day and things are going well, and then you miss a day, you have to actively prioritize not missing the next day. Because if you miss twice, we found time and time again, barring any kind of real unforeseen circumstance, that you are going to not complete the course. Because one day turns into two, then you are building a new habit of not writing. You're going to find a reason the third day and the fourth day, and then before you know it, you've fallen off. So this is something, it's more fundamental on just a habit building side. The goal is not to create a streak to write every single day. It's to create a streak of never missing twice. And if you can do that, you're always going to be able to get back on the next day and keep your quote unquote streak going. And that's something we preach from the very beginning.
So you said like you've got these exciting things going on now, and it's been 6 weeks since you left for your job. So really exciting to interview at this time because it's the turning point for you, right? So for people listening who want to find out more about you and Ship30for30, where should they go to?
So yes, very exciting times right now. I'm hoping we look back on this episode in a year and maybe we'll have to do a follow-up and see all the things that have happened. If they want to find me, they can find me on Twitter at Dickie Bush, DickieBush. That's where I spend far too much time. Or LinkedIn, same thing, Dickie Bush. If you want to find out, here, I'll send you to, if you go to startwritingonline.com, it's our 13,000 word ultimate guide. If you're looking to kind of begin to put your ideas out on the internet, wherever you are on any platform, that guide's going to kind of give you a crash course. It's got a 7-day email course that comes with it for free. Check it out. It's going to help you a lot. I think it's the guide that I wish I had before I wrote on my blog once a week for 9 months and wanted to give up entirely. So that's where they can find me, at Dickie Bush on Twitter, and then startwritingonline.com.